the co-founder of a student entrepreneurship club, for example. And I created my own company that is still up and running 15 years in the UK. And just last week, before boarding the plane to India, I just created another company in Germany that is more related to robotics and marine robotics, critical infrastructure. There was just a rush to the notary and then going to the plane. Now, this morning, we had a very nice ceremony of plantation of a tree with the minister and different guests. And I want to start our session just with the trees. I believe that all our companies that we want to create, we want to innovate, can be kind of trees. And as long as being humanity has been a lot of efforts into selecting the right type of culture, the right type of trees, in the same way as everybody interested in innovation is putting a lot of efforts to create something new, to add new features, to be disruptive. But the plant is only one aspect. So in order for the tree to grow, you don't need only the tree, you need the terrain. So you've seen, some of you, that's where the plantation of the tree, we had the soil, and then we put the water in, and then there is the wind, there is the sunshine. So all these things are very important for a company. So it's not only the product itself, but it's also the ecosystem. And the ecosystem sometimes is shaped by governmental policies, sometimes is shaped by the founder initiatives, and so on. So with this, I think that thinking about our trees and thinking about how do we want to sustain our trees, what are the right terrain, and if you want to plant a tree in the desert, well, it doesn't really work. So you move out or you move somewhere else. So I think it's a great question from the policymaker, how to make the terrain fertile for trees so that more tree planter wants to use the terrain. And we can start our session inviting our keynote speaker. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Subi Chaturvedi. So he's the Global Senior Vice President and Chief Corporate Affairs and Public Policy Officer at InMobi Group. And we were just discussing, it became a unicorn in 2011. Before this was a trend. So congratulations. And a distinguished expert in public policy, digital economy, internet governance, and cybersecurity. She has advised global organizations, governments, and Fortune 500 companies. She serves on the Indian National Science Academy Board and is the first Indian on the UN IGF MAG. Have represented two stakeholder groups. She currently co-chairs the Indo-US AI Task Force Digital Economy Committee, and she is the Sherpa of WG7 of the US-India CEO Forum, shaping policy in AI, cybersecurity, entrepreneurship, and emerging technologies. So with a round of applause, please welcome Subi Chaturvedi.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Can we request the team to please pull the slides up? That's the last slide. Thank you so much. And welcome. I don't see very many faces, but yeah, we'll wait. So though we're discussing sciences, but as always, technology and PowerPoint, very little point to make and even lesser power as we see in the room today. The conversation that I'd love to have with you is about how science, policy, entrepreneurship, innovation engage with each other, and especially from a perspective of gender as well as the lens of Global South. So two of the previous speakers have talked about how InMobi is India's first unicorn. That's my day job. We started in 2007 as something called M-Khoj. Khoj means discovery, and M was the acronym for mobiles. I'm very happy that we're having this conversation at IIT Hyderabad and in the midst of the Global Young Sciences Academy. So all my life, I've dealt with the imposter syndrome. I've been the interloper who's been present in platforms and rooms where you're often questioned, hey, you're not an engineer. What are you really doing here? So when we talked very briefly about the journey on internet governance and when I became one of the first members on the UN MAG, it was usually white, male, and European. A lot of these conversations took place in very exotic destinations called Vilnius and Baku, and it was difficult to get there. So I was then teaching in India's leading liberal arts college, and it was always about the government will have better perspective, and civil society can sort of come in and be in those rooms, but not really engage. And that's how things were done back then. The global governments understood telecom really well because it worked as a signed licensor arrangement between governments. But when it came to the internet, around 2012 and 11, when things started scaling up, so from about, let's say, 50 million devices, we suddenly started looking at much bigger numbers. And Professor Sharma very kindly talked about bridging the digital divide. We've lived through that time, as a lot of members today in the room, again, would have experienced it when the cell phone came into the room. And that's why the lens of gender is very, very important when we talk about innovation, when we talk about diffusion of innovation, when we talk about entrepreneurship. In India in particular, it was usually the woman of the house who would get a feature phone. So the young boy or girl in the family was going to be the future breadwinner, and they would get a smartphone. They would also be one of the first people to get the laptop. And this continued for a very long time. So when we came to the innovation aspect or technology, it was often designed by men for men. And we at InMobi recognized this very, very early. So our product leader, our head of sciences, our head of technology, they're all women. There's a PwC study that talks about how when you have women leaders, not just representing, not just being notional, in a lot of decision-making places, it adds about 36% to direct profitability. So it's good for business. When you have women designing technology-led products and consumer technology, they don't just look at profit lines, they also look at customer centricity. So over time, the conversation between diversity and inclusion, it wasn't just important to be in the room, it was equally important to have the mic and to pass the mic around. So all of these lived experiences meant 11 jobs later. I've been in banking, I've been in finance, I've been in media, I've taught for about 5.5 years. Now I make sure that if you get the mic, you hold on to it. You also look for the next generation of women leaders and scientists. And for that, I'll always be grateful to Professor Ashutosh Sharma, who invited me to the Indian National Science Academy. We had a conversation with people who were going to be directors of really important scientific organizations. And they were director -1. They were department in charges, they were deans. So from the conversation around transformational leadership, from the conversation around not just get more women in the room, but give them leadership roles. Take a punt on them. Hi, we're back. So, okay, we still don't have the deck, but the structure of today's conversation, because it's a keynote, we will not get into a lot of specifics, but I do want to define that it's not easy when you look at innovation or when you start looking at technology. A lot of you are researchers, a lot of you are practitioners. At the heart of everything that we do, we put relevant problems to solve for. Sorry. Okay, thank you. That's just the title slide. So whenever we're ready, just let me know. So what we're trying to do today, and that is why I was invited to spend some time on this panel, is to share how industry looks at research. What is it that we can do so that we're all not working in silos? We're able to benefit from this amazing network. And by the way, congratulations to all of you. It was so amazing to learn about your stories in 6 words. Oscar, I still love your hair. And the enthusiasm and the energy is really infectious. So many, many congratulations to IIT Hyderabad for being a wonderful host and for GYA to pick up this region. I encourage you very strongly to make the time to go out and see the city. The city of Hyderabad is very, very inspiring. One of my first photography exhibitions was in a gallery right here. We called it Ignited Minds. It was based on the book of one of our first presidents, who himself is called the Rocket Man of the country. And this conversation of ensuring that every lived experience allows you to make decisions and choices. So no matter where you are, whichever part of the world that you come from, we're all entrepreneurial. Every single act and every choice that you make is going to impact somebody's life, and in a way that is quite transformative. Which is why sharing this journey of not being an engineer, but still making sure that you're in the room, you own your space, and you're able to add and contribute meaningfully to every single interaction that you have. So how do we make sure that we look at global leadership? We look at entrepreneurship in a world that's increasingly connected, that's increasingly networked. So these are just some conversations that I wanted to have with you. And every single problem statement that we're seeing today, there is an ask for, if your house is on fire, it's time to move beyond dialogue to impact and action. So local pain points, but which are increasingly connected. So I was so inspired when I was looking at all your work and the 6-word summaries. Francisco here is a marine biologist. People who are looking at oceans and how they impact every single decision that we make, and what is the impact that a tiny startup in Vietnam and another startup in Singapore is having by using biodiesel, which is recyclable. What is the impact that you're building on the generation that's going to follow from here? One of the most crucial problems that we deal with during winters in Delhi is pollution. And these are problems that we should have been able to solve for by now. So where is it that science engages with scale? Where is it that entrepreneurship engages with technology for good and with solutions that will inspire today so that we leave the planet better than what we found it? And that is the core philosophy of the InMobi group, which is where I come from. So when we look at, sorry, the slides aren't still moving. Okay. So this is where we wanted to discuss how the interconnectedness of everything that we're doing in a decisive world is going to impact the choices that we're making. Where is it that governments, and that's where the policy lens comes from. So as a public policy practitioner, it is my job, and I'm so happy that Jayesh Ranjan sir is with us today. He's somebody who's served as the IT secretary of the state of Telangana. He's somebody that the industry felt very safe and very comfortable to approach. So every time we were disrupting, and that's what startups do. We build for scale, we solve problems which are quick, we solve for problems which are relevant. What is it that governments of the day can do for us? But the question always was, how do we engage with the government? How do we reach out this very large, very nebulous organization? And that's where forward-looking policymakers and bureaucrats like him, who've been mentors, they've been friends for startups, they've been friends for solutions, which is where you could go to them. But it was equally important for us to understand what public policy really meant. So any policy that puts public interest at the heart of public consultation, and that makes laws for citizens which takes into account their views and their impact. We went a step further. When we started working with policymakers, it was very important that every draft and every law that was being written had a gender audit. So the amount of defense spending and the amount of attention that a lot of global issues would get, and that meant working across stakeholder groups. So that meant that you were largely so that meant that you could bring together the entire stakeholder group on a single table across media, across academia, across civil society. And remember, this is a party that nobody is going to invite you to. So it was very, very important that you were able to ensure that not only were you at the table, not only did you have a seat at the table, sometimes when you were excluded, you were able to take that hammer and chisel and create your own table so that every single stakeholder was invited. The lessons on entrepreneurship today, funding is not a problem. There are angel investors, there are investors, if you go to them with a good idea, they're looking to help you scale. But remember the lessons which are very, very crucial. Anybody who's, even if there's one person in the room today who's decided that they wish to take their idea and they want to make sure that it's a scalable product, it's a go-to-market product, it's equally important to not be shy to tell your own stories. So when we sit across investment tables, it's not just the idea, it's the team, it is also the founder, it is also the narrative, it is also the voice of the founder who people invest in. And that is why owning your space, ensuring who you are and the ability to tell your story, the ability to hold your space with confidence and the ability to share your journey is equally important. Why is India so special? Why is Global South so special? Why is each of you, why are you so special? Because when you're at a seat on the table, there are several Me Toos. It's very, very important that you're able to share your own unique journey, your own unique perspective. I'm so happy to acknowledge our Honorable Minister of Education. Sir, one of my first jobs was with Gas Authority of India Limited. When we started our journey, and that's the first time we started discussing questions in 2007 around sustainability. GAIL was not the largest company in oil and gas. When we started discussing, we looked at how plastics and drip irrigation can make a difference in people's lives. So when we look at conversations around what can academia, how does innovation scale, what is it that we can do together, these are some of the moments where I was told you're in the wrong room. Moments from VISs, moments where you could talk to leaders from public sector enterprises. If you have a good idea, today every government, especially I can speak for my government, the bridge that we needed to solve for was how do you make sure that sorry, I will just take you back a couple of slides. These are my students from LSR. So this is one of the country's leading liberal arts colleges, and that's everybody who's in the room today. That is our legacy. What do you leave behind for generations of the future? So I told you about 10 jobs across banking, across innovation, across media. This is the one that was most satisfying, which is why today I stand here with pride that my government listens, my government is responsive. And if you have representatives like Jayesh sir here in the room today, they're also people who help you build capacity. So this is where I go back to something what Professor Ashutosh Sharma said, that the haloed halls of science academies are no longer just spaces for men. They're not just spaces where you need to have arrived after 4 decades of work. When you bring in a fresh perspective, entrepreneurship blossoms. So where funding used to be a crisis, collaboration industry working with academia. And this is where I'm so happy the director of IIT Hyderabad is here. He's someone I hold with a lot of respect. He's somebody who's well loved by his faculty and his students. And my last visit here was about a month and a half ago, which is where I had the pleasure of meeting someone who's ready and available. He's your 2 a.m. friend that you can call without hesitation. And that's the approach that institutions of higher learning had to take. This is the space where you fall forward. This is the space where you build for greatness, which is why we were so proud and we were so confident that we could proudly make in India for the world. So what I'm presenting to you on the screen is Glance AI. It's on 500 million devices. We're now the leading use case for artificial intelligence. We proudly built this in India, and we made it for the world. The one problem that we used to face was a crisis of talent, and we're so happy that with the Honorable Minister's guidance, the new education policy is actively bridging that divide between academia. The last thing that I want to leave you with before Francesco comes in and takes the mic away is a small little poster. Sir, Professor Sharma, this is dedicated to you. We made this when 2 months ago, Professor Sharma reached out to us and said, INSA for the first time is going to actively look at bringing in women associates, women who may not be 70 years of age, but women who have something to say, women who have a perspective, women who have an opinion. And that is what all my young friends and colleagues from across every single university. Don't wait for a formal academy. Make safe spaces. Make sure you're building groups. Make sure that you're building a community that will lean in and that will help you leave this.
Oh, please, please. Great. A round of applause for Subi Chaturvedi. Very inspiring talk. And it's a great pleasure now to invite Jayesh Ranjan to stage. He's the Special Chief Secretary, Industry and Investment Cell, Government of Telangana. So Jayesh is a member of the AIS of the 1992 batch and working in the state of Telangana as a Special Chief Secretary for Youth Advancement, Tourism and Culture, Government of Telangana. He's also the CEO of the Industry and Investment Cell. He holds a master's degree in psychology from Delhi University, degree in business management, master in public management, and NAU's Singapore. Among other distinctions, he was awarded the Royal Order of the Polar Star by His Majesty the King of Sweden in 2019. He's always been awarded the honorary doctorate from the University of Bolton in 2022. And I'm going to call also the other panelists on stage. So please welcome to Nohad Alomari. So Nohad Alomari is former Dean of Mosul University in Iraq. She works in the field of pharmaceutical sciences and the education sector. She was active in this field for more than 3 decades with a proven record of professional history, patents, national and international scientific awards. Professor Alomari has a strong and clear vision to find the realistic solutions to challenges in the field of pharmaceutical education and sciences. Nohad was Deputy Dean of the College for Pharmacy at the University of Mosul, and the alternate location for the years 2014-2017. This period of time was a turning point in her academic career, being full of challenges. She has also been appointed Dean of the College of Pharmacy, University of Al-Kitab, where she focused on empowering women. Thank you. And it's a great pleasure to have on stage also Eric Komolo. He's a lecturer at the Faculty of Law in Egerton University in Kenya. So Eric is a practicing lawyer and academic researcher based out of Nairobi and listed counsel of the African Court of Human and People Rights. He serves as the official ombudsman for Amnesty International in Kenya. He's a member of Tax Appeals Tribunal, where he adjudicates cases on tax law and administration, and chairs Stat Committee on Trainings, Capacity Building, and Resource Mobilization, and senior lecturer, Faculty of Law in Egerton University. He also serves as visiting lecturer at Strasbourg Law School, where he designed and taught the first LLM unit on public-private partnership in Africa, in Kenya. And our last speaker in our panel is Arnab Dutta. So he's associate professor at the Indian Institute of Technology in Bombay. So Arnab completed his BSc at President's College, Kolkata, and MSc at IIT Bombay in 2007. He earned his PhD in inorganic chemistry from Arizona State University in 2012, focusing on bio-inspired green hydrogen production. After working at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory on synthetic catalysts for H2 production, he began his independent career at IIT Gandhinagar in 2015. Since 2020, he is an associate professor at IIT Bombay. His research focuses on sustainable green hydrogen production, CO2 mitigation, water oxidation, and small molecule activation. Arnab is a Ramujan Fellow and an associate of the Indian Academy of Sciences and INEOS member. A round of applause for all our panelists, please. And in order to continue our great session, I would like to invite Jayesh Ranjan on stage to address with a keynote address our public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Greetings to fellow panelists, greetings to members in the audience, Honorable Union Minister, Professor Murthy, Dr. Sharma. I would like to speak very briefly on how we as a government here in Telangana have gone about promoting innovation and entrepreneurship. Many of the members in the audience may not know this, but the state of Telangana was created in 2014. The constitution in India allows for new states to be created if there's a demand for it, if there's a justification. And in 2014, this new state was created, becoming the 29th state in the country. In 2014, Hyderabad was not a very thriving center for innovation and entrepreneurship. There were some startups. There were a couple of incubators, one in the Indian School of Business, one in Triple IT. There were just about 50, 60 startups, but Hyderabad was not really seen as a very vibrant, thriving innovation hub, as was the case of another city like Bangalore or Bombay or Gurgaon, etc., etc. But in 2014 itself, when Telangana became a new state, a very conscious decision was taken that let us become a state which is very welcoming of startups. And the imperative was that, as some of you who are from India would know, the region which was earlier Telangana in the combined state of Andhra Pradesh, this region had faced successive deprivation and missed opportunities, etc. And therefore, when this region became a new state, it was felt that we should make up for the lost time. We should try to advance our development. And obviously, it was very clear that technology is going to play a very important role in that development journey. And it was also decided that if you look around, who is providing technology solutions? Of course, large companies are there, tech companies are there, institutions like the IITs and others are there, but the real path-breaking, the real futuristic technologies are coming from young innovators, young entrepreneurs, whom we call startups. So it was decided that as a state, we should do something to encourage startups to come here, develop solutions, bring them to the use of common people. But in 2014, the popular narrative was not like that. The popular narrative was that the government should actually stay away from this business. This is a activity where merit, talent, market forces, global developments, these are the ones which will take center stage. And the government has really no role in this world. The government should actually leave the entrepreneurs and innovators alone. This was the popular narrative, but we decided that this is not really the correct way of judging the circumstances. The government, of course, should not get into override regulation, micromanagement, but the government can certainly play a very strategic role. So I remember way back in 2014, as I said, there were about 40, 50 startups in the city at that time. we decided to call them and discuss with them what exactly do they require from the government. And I remember it was an interaction which happened at Triple IT Hyderabad. It was roughly like this only. We were seated here, our startups were seated there. And the question which we asked them was that how can the government help you? And you will be very kind of amused and surprised to hear that the answer which was given was that if the government stays away from us, that is the best help that the government can do to us. But obviously it was very clear where this kind of answers were coming. This is the kind of narrative which the IT industry has promoted, that the government stayed away, therefore we became big, though that is only part of the story. So we kind of changed the question. We asked them a different question. The question which was asked was that, do you experience any challenges, difficulties, pain points, which you think that the government can solve? And when this question was asked, I mean, dozens of replies came. There was no stopping those startups. But at the end of that dialogue, what we realized that every pain point which they are raising, which they are speaking about, the government can potentially solve all of them without any exception. Everything that they mentioned has a solution, and it is very easy to put together that solution. So thereafter, what we decided was that, first of all, because there is so much of mistrust about the role of the government, let us bring out a policy. Let us write what exactly the government intends to do in black and white, put it in public domain. So this was something which we attempted as the first task, to write a startup and innovation and entrepreneurship policy. And I'm happy to share with you, you can look this policy up. This policy is a very concise document. In our country, there's a norm that unless you have written 500 pages, you have not done a good job. The policy book should be, you're a policy expert, the policy book should be so thick that if you hold it, it should sprain your wrist. But if you see our policy, it is just 18 pages. But every sentence in that book leads to some action, because these are all based on feedback which we picked from the startups. So it's a bottoms-up exercise. Every sentence provides a solution to some of the challenges which they kind of mentioned. The next thing which we did, and I personally feel that this is what made the entire difference between what Telangana was in 2014 and where we have reached today, is to create multiple institutions. See, again, this is something which people comment about India, that great policies are written, but nothing happens on the ground. Everything remains on paper. And if you really dive deep on why is it happening, one of the reasons will be that no one takes complete responsibility for implementing what is promised or announced in the policy. So someone can tell me that technically you are the principal secretary looking after innovation and entrepreneurship, you have to implement this policy, and technically they may be correct, but I would have to look after hundreds of other things also. And even if I'm passionate about innovation and entrepreneurship, I can't devote 24/7 of my time looking just at that. So what we have done is that we have created 7 institutions, and each institution implements a part of the policy, and between all of them, all 7 of them, the entirety of the policy is implemented. So one of the institutions is called T-Hub. In fact, I don't know what is your schedule, but many times I notice that people who come to Hyderabad for conferences and programs, they actually come to T-Hub to see how can the government create an institution, which is today the gold standard for promoting innovation and entrepreneurship. So if you have even an hour's time, it's not very far from where you are, from the IIT. You can visit T-Hub. That is recognized as the best practice, a national role model by Government of India as well. So that is an institution which promotes technology entrepreneurship. We created another institution called T-Works, which promotes innovation and entrepreneurship related to hardware, to prototyping, to making. Again, one of its kind in the country, considered to be the best example of how a prototyping facility can be set up. The biggest in the country also, coincidentally, both T-Hub and T-Works. We have created a third institution called V-Hub, and I would encourage you to come and visit that. That focuses only on promoting entrepreneurship amongst women. The fourth institution that we created, after we ran these 3 institutions for a while, we noticed that these are great institutions, but they fail to attract talent from the districts, from the rural areas, from the semi-urban areas, and there is lots of talent, believe me, in these kind of places also. People like us who live in the cities, We typically look down upon the kind of work, the kind of innovation which is happening in the villages, in the communities at the local area. So we created an institution called the Telangana State Innovation Cell, which identifies innovators, problem solvers, entrepreneurs in the rural areas, improves their technology, improves their go-to-market strategy, helps them scale. And I feel very proud about it that in the last 12 years or so, close to 600 such rural innovators have been identified, and many of them have created very useful products and solutions for the entire community. We created one more institution which today has been adopted nationally through the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor. Our institution is called RICH, Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad. Again, as a city, Hyderabad is blessed to have more than 4 dozen plus world-class knowledge institutions. But in 2014, when we took stock about these institutions, we found that they operate very in a fragmented way, in silos, very little of collaboration. For a startup, it becomes very difficult to open the doors of these institutions. You mentioned President Kalam. Some of the best defense R&D institutions are located in Hyderabad. We have the best life sciences institutions, agriculture institutions. But again, we found that they don't collaborate on common problems. They don't work with the industry. They don't work with startups. So we have created this platform called RICH, Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, which brings together all these institutions along with startups and industry. We have also created an institution which creates a pipeline of innovators. This is called TASK, Telangana Academy for Skills and Knowledge. We work with colleges. Last 1 minute, please. We work with colleges and schools also to ensure that from a very young age, the seeds of entrepreneurship is sown among students. And tomorrow, if they want to become an entrepreneur, there is some training, there is some method in the approach that they want to take up. The last point which I want to mention is that I spoke about policy, I spoke about institutions, but there is a third element behind the success of Telangana, which is on talent. So one very obvious question is that who runs these institutions? And again, I'm happy to share with you that, of course, in the government, while we do acknowledge that there are talented people, but we believe that there are far more talented people outside the government to run these kind of programs. And between all these 7 institutions that I speak about, we have recruited more than 500 people, everyone from the private market, everyone from the open market, based on their merit, based on their ability. And today, we feel very proud that through government's catalyzing effort, we have created a very meticulous, very comprehensive innovation ecosystem. And today, the results are before everyone to see. In 2014, as I said, we just had around 40, 50 startups. That number has gone to 7,000 now. And it is not just numbers. The quality of work they do, the quality of products and solutions, the kind of valuation, the kind of funding. We had only 2 incubators in those days. Today we have 77 innovation centers, incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces. So this is a new narrative that the government, if it is strategic in its approach and decision making, we can actually make a difference in promoting a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now it's the turn of Nohad Alomari for her address, please.
So, okay. Good morning, India. And good morning, highly distinguished audience and Global Young Academy. It is my privilege to be here today, sharing my case study, how you can successfully connect innovation with entrepreneur and you getting a successful case study. So I choose the title Entrepreneurship for Resilience from Academia to the Colony Industry, a Dare to Dream journey. Of course, I'd like to share some of my country civilization. I guess some of you have no idea about Iraq. Iraq is considered to be one of more than Parthenon and Sumerian. So from this country, Nuhad want to share her success story.
I just discovered this so cute and beautiful restaurant in my kitchen. I want to show you. Come with me. Hello. Good morning. How are you? Thank you so much.
So out of the ruins of war, Mom Kitchen was born, reviving life with mother touch. The story behind my project was considered to be non-profit project from academia and entrepreneurship. It is my journey from drug discovery to food, chemistry, and discovery. Today, I'd like to share with you my personal and professional transformation, how I transition from a career in academia and pharmaceutical research to becoming a food entrepreneur. This is the story of Mom Kitchen, a dream born from science, memory, and deep love of healing through food. For years, I was deeply involved in pharmaceutical sciences, teaching, researching, publishing, and managing academic program. Eventually, I served as a dean of College of Pharmacy, leading teams, mentoring students, and shaping curricula. It was a life of purpose, but something inside me was still searching for more. More than 6, 7 patents I recognized as women with 7 patents during my journey, and there were a hidden desire for change. Despite the respect, achievement, and structured life in academia, I felt a growing desire to connect with people more personally, to create something rooted in tradition, emotion, and nourishment. I wanted to step beyond the classroom and touch lives in different way. It's a question, so how it has come? My scientific background helped me understand the power of molecules, as I am interested in pharmaceutical chemistry and with the rational drug design. But I began to realize food, like medicine, is chemistry too, and not just chemical. It is emotional, cultural, and deeply healing. I began to see traditional cooking as another kind of science, and perhaps a more human one. So many innovation began from simple needs in local communities. In a region like Iraq, researchers face major challenges applying theory to practice. So according to my biography, which is more than 3 decades, it was full of challenge and inconvenience security situation. A significant gap exists between academia and community, and between research and entrepreneurship. The concept began with memories, my mother's flavors, her love, and the feeling of safety her food gave. I opened a small kitchen inspired by her legacy, focusing on authenticity, wellness, and heritage. My mom kitchen became more than business. It became a tribute, a lab, and message. The shift was not easy. No lab, no titles, no formulas, just fire, flavor, customers, and expectations. I had to learn everything from scratch, something far away from academia. Sourcing ingredients, managing operation, marketing and social media, building trust in a new identity. So science meets soul. I used my scientific mindset to improve recipes, balance nutrition, and ensure food safety. But more importantly, I learned how to connect with people, stories, and emotion. Each dish I serve tells a story of healing, of memory, of resilience. A lot of academic accomplished. Recently, I resigned as National Assessor for Accreditation College of Pharmacy, in addition as an Iraqi reviewer for patent for the COSIC. So, Mom Kitchen being an icon of women who connect academia, patent, innovation, and entrepreneurship successfully. Many people, especially women, began reaching out to say my story gave them hope. Some were scientists, other home workers, makers, students, or retired professionals. They saw in me what was possible. That is never too late to start again. So, some lessons from my journey is that knowledge never goes to waste. It evolves. Identity is not a title. It is what you create. Passion can rise from pain or memory. Food is universal language and a powerful healer. And actually, I want to forward my future vision via what is next for me. Of course, I started with small kitchen with the area only 72 in the old city and for ancient type of the site of Mosul, which suffer from highly destructive collapse during ISS invade of my city. Offering workshop on food, nutrition, and culture, writing my own book about this journey, mentoring other women with big dreams. And actually in this panel, I like to forward some key lessons. Entrepreneurship doesn't always require large capital, but institutional support, and even not, you can do it by yourself. If you believe by yourself, linking education with the job market should start in curriculum design, not after graduation, and supporting innovation require network, microfunding, and a culture that accepts failure. So mostly, I forward my advice to my student, whether undergraduate or postgraduate, usually with high degree of innovation. shoot the moon. Even you cannot, even you fail, you will fall in the stars. So it's supposed to be, as a global young academy, this is a lesson for you, as for my student, whether under or postgraduate, there is no limit for your wellness and no limit for your power. We are allowed to reinvent ourselves. Title can change, dream can shift, but passion, purpose, and impact, those stay with us. I'd like to forward two questions actually for the panelists. How can academic institution be more flexible in supporting entrepreneurial initiatives? What are effective ways to encourage young researchers to engage in community-based work? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring, and we are starting to become hungry also after the presentation. You see that I really love all the speakers, so that's why I try to get closer and closer and hug them. And it's my pleasure now to invite Eric Komolo as our next panelist.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be very brief by just telling a story. I was invited to talk about social enterprises, social entrepreneurs, and their role in catalyzing innovation and entrepreneurship in academic environment. But because I'm in India, and because I designed the first course on public-private partnership at master's level in Kenya, I'll also touch very briefly on this issue of public-private partnership and how we can attract investments that then lead to innovation and entrepreneurship in the public sector space. So somewhere in 2006, a gentleman from New Zealand called Daniel Radcliffe came to Kenya to volunteer. He wanted to just do good, and he wanted to have a good experience. I think partly because universities globally now award credits based on how you have given back to society. Then when he went back, he felt that the experience was not good enough. So he started something called International Volunteer Headquarters. I'll put the website there, you can get into it. In 2011, I won a scholarship to, I'm also Kenyan, I won a scholarship to University of Hong Kong to study my PhD. And it struck me when I got there, based on the interest my skin was generating, that I was probably the only black person there. In fact, the only other black person I found there was a visiting student from America, and I only knew he was from America when I went to say hi to him. Around that time, there's a lot of interest at the University of Hong Kong to internationalize, basically to have students go abroad for a semester or during the summer. And so many had not been to Africa. And they were keen when I was going back home for my regular visits to also come with me, but I didn't have a mechanism. At the end of the day, an idea came and I started an organization called Maklweta, which in Kenya means please hold my hands. The website is also there. What then happened is that I learned from Daniel Radcliffe about what he had done and how he had tried to encourage international volunteerism, and now he has moved into international internship placements, basically placing students all over to do projects for some time, for credits and for other reasons. What then happened is that Daniel was able to attract a lot of seed capital. And as of this morning, he had hosted well over 140,000 students globally to different countries. Basically, it's growing very fast. Now, in my case, I grew fairly fast because I was in Hong Kong for 5 years, up to 2016. But my main market were the universities in Hong Kong. But even that, I still had to get a lot of support from my professors to promote the idea, to get validation, so to speak. And then a journalist in Hong Kong noticed me somewhere in 2015 and wrote this story. She interviewed me innocently. A week or so later, I got a lot of calls in the morning that my story was in South China Morning Post. Here is the story. Kenyan lawyer in Hong Kong helps his poverty-ravaged village through power of education. That story then triggered a lot of interest in my organization, regardless of the content, because words mean different things in different societies. So that story, written from an NGO perspective, triggered a lot of interest in my organization. And that's the year I was able to take about 100 students to Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and Rwanda. So these two organizations, and this is really why I'm bringing it, aim to achieve the same thing, but one had these structural issues that had to be confronted through localized promotion. Another one accessed the necessary capital, because we were both targeting university students, basically higher education, and obviously university professors. And to date, as much as I've transitioned from Maclota, because now I serve as a judge in the tax tribunal, so I'll be conflicted, Daniel is going on and is doing fairly well. I think he's attracted a lot of seed capital, now probably in what they call Series C. What this tells you is how social enterprises can grow in an ecosystem that encourages, first, partnership with institutions of higher learning, and two, attracting capital that's ready to support ideas, however nascent they may be. Because being Kenyan, and Daniel's story was from his experience in Kenya, and I am Kenyan myself, and I know Kenya more than him. It's enough to tell, and I certainly know Africa more than him. It tells you how social enterprises, particularly in academic sector, are likely to thrive more when there's that organic support that then is followed by capital, because eventually they do need capital, even if they're aiming to do good. The second one is something that I think you're familiar with, because we are running out of time. The second one is something I think you are very familiar with. So I'm just, as you can see, I've managed to take about 500 students, mostly from Hong Kong and mainland China and Europe, to Kenya, and mostly go to teach, to donate, to also just visit and see the country from a perspective that is normally not well understood unless you are there. But then I mentioned that since, I don't want to take a lot of time in the interest of interacting, since I'm here, and since I actively teach public-private partnership as a course, and since the Honorable Minister is here and most likely has interacted with his counterparts in Kenya and Africa, you are aware that about a year ago, you have a big company here called the Adani Group that had a lot of interest in investing in Africa, particularly Kenya. And if you've been to Kenya and you've been to the airport, you know that it needs expansion. It needs modernization. If you go to the energy sector, you know that for sure we need modernization in the energy sector, and certainly in the infrastructure. And you also know that most likely we don't have the capital. And if it is there, it is limited. But then, because of dynamics beyond me, and certainly beyond the audience here, the public-private partnership proposal that they came with at the moment is stalled. And they were not the first to come. Before that, there was a French company that came to modernize one of the major roads that we need to be modernized. And that has been stalled for about 6-7 years plus, from 2019. Always stalling because of court cases. And court cases built around something in the Kenyan constitution. We cite a lot about Indian constitution in Kenya when cases decided in India when we are litigating in Kenya, and for the most part successfully. So there's this clause in the Kenyan constitution, now moving to the law, that talks about public participation. that before you implement any project, you must do public participation. But nobody has clarified what public participation is. Only courts are trying to clarify it. So all these projects that relate to innovation and entrepreneurship and attracting capital, particularly when it is external capital, mostly stall because of this clause called public participation. For example, the Adani Group stalled in court before other issues came up because of public participation. So the point I'm trying to highlight here, and we'll be able to discuss further, is that it is so important when we are talking about innovation in the global south to appreciate the legal infrastructure and ensure that you go through it, insist that you go through it, so that you preempt problems that are likely to come going forward. Thank you very much. Let me cede the floor since Professor is here, and I'll be able to have a conversation with you on these two sides of the story.
Excellent. And then we have our last panelist, Arnab Dutta. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to thank the organizations of this conference that provides me the platform to share this nice time with the honorable dignitaries and And also, I would like to say my congratulations to the newly inducted members of GWIA. And encouraged by their 6 words, I would like to say, like, I am actually initially was a chemist, which curiosity transformed me into an accidental entrepreneur. And how it began, it's actually when I started my career as a young chemist, and started my independent career, at that point of time, I was thinking like, I am going to solve all the global problems. And when I started at IIT Gandhinagar, a newly inducted IIT, very similar to IIT Hyderabad. And over there, I was pushed into the reality, like we have to think local first. And being a local, being a global, that motto comes into my mind. And over there, we found we have a lot of local challenges that we are facing all spaces of the society. And we need to find a solution which is very much sustainable and fitted to that particular problems. And from there, we come out with local innovations. And these local innovations leads to emerging entrepreneurship coming from so-called not so big ideas, small ideas, but making big changes. And those, if we get connected, then can give the solution for a global challenge. And this is very much important because in a lab, outskirt from the society, we can make some solutions and think that is going to solve the problem. But we probably don't understand what is happening at the grassroots level. What is the infrastructural problem? What is the cultural nuances? And unless and until we go there, understand that, we cannot make a solution which will be sustainable. So ensuring a sustainable solution needed that particular approach. Then comes my second point, is that what kind of innovation we are thinking about. In India, we have a term called jugaad. That means we are trying to find a best solution with minimal input, frugal innovations. And this is, I believe, is happening all around the world. Initially, it was shown like it is not the important one. You have to showcase a solution which is actually very glowing, very charming. But the solution can be very simple. And most of the time, the simple solutions are actually the best solutions. And in India, we are actually very good into the jugaad things. When I was a student 20 years back in the same institute where I am teacher right now, at that time, the term comes, startups. At IIT Bombay, we have one of the first incubation centers all around India. And I was talking to my friends over there, they said like, I don't want to do a job I want to initiate a startup. And most of us thought like, this guy is totally lost his mind. They have no idea what this person is going to do. And now 20 years back, if you say the term startup, even my parents, which is actually one generation back, they also understand, okay, he or she is trying to do something new, so we should support them. So there is a change in the perspective, and this is actually the change in the culture, what Mr. Jayesh was telling earlier, that is actually coming up. And from this particular approach, it gives us a sense of doing something new in a new way and give us the opportunity to find these frugal innovations, because these frugal innovations, the Jugaru innovations, give us a key to how to make scalable solution coming from a very basic in setup. And these particular setups are very much important for the growing economies, specifically the South Asia, the Latin America, the Africa, where most of our majority of the population, especially the young population, is coming from. So all these particular places, if you start thinking, we need a healthcare solution. Can I make a healthcare solution which solves cancer, but at the same time, is it affordable to us? So this kind of solutions is needed, and over there, we might need to look into this so-called simple, but not so, I would say, glowing solutions. So we might need to give a little bit of approach to that. And my third and penultimate point is on policy and investment ecosystem, which is actually very nicely pointed out by Dr. Subi and Mr. Jayesh earlier. So over there, innovators look into the systems, and as an innovator myself, we don't really think the first thing like, we'll make a lot of money. We think like, oh, this sounds interesting. Can it make a good solution? And over there, we start doing the things, go slowly up to the technology readiness level or the TRL ladder, and at one point of time, I need some more support, and where this support is going to come from. As an academics, we don't really know about it, and there comes the not only the angel investors, I would say the angels like Mr. Jayesh, who actually connect those points. And with the governmental support, we are actually going through this, I would say, reformation of the regulations. So when we first initiated a startup almost 3 years back, I was very scared that how many documents I have to sign. I never signed so many documents in my life, and how many pages of rules and regulations I have to go through. And thanks that the government is now coming up with the ideas, making it much more simpler. 1 or 2 pages, you get all the information, and that makes life easier for the shy academicians that we can make a good solution. And over there, the support is coming for impact-driven technologies. It is not like we innovate first and then find the solution that where it can fit. We are coming up, this is the problem we are facing, how we can find a solution. So that is very nicely coming up. And all the governments all around the world is now supporting that. I would like to especially mention the Indian government, how they are putting up startup Mahakums, where just 2 months back in New Delhi, we have a startup conglomeration all around India. And I didn't know that so many people all around this part of the society is coming from there. And it's very heartening to see right now, India doesn't mean only the big metro cities. They're coming from the 2nd tier, 3rd tier, and even rural areas of the world. And with the current world, which is very nicely connected all among us, they're very coming up with the same passion, same information, and they're connecting the dots. And it is very inspiring to hear about the story of Mother's Kitchen. And it is very nice to see that it is not only coming from Iraq, it's coming from India, it's coming from all around the world. Now, if you have a thought process, if you have an idea, you can get connected to the right people and go through that. And I believe that we are having this liberation thought because we are actually going through a reform in these regulations, which is very similar to the economic reform India is actually going through over the last 20 years and becoming one of the superpowers. So superpower is not only because of the population, only because of the powers from other things, but also the power of innovation. And finally, I would like to also make a point on the emerging technologies. So when we actually do the research in our own silos, we actually look into the things that we actually very comfortable with, and we think that the work I am doing or we are doing is the most important work in the world. But if you ask like what are the important aspects where we should develop the technologies, we can think about AI, we can think about renewable energies, we can think about nanotech, quantum technologies, digit health, and the list goes on. And at point of time, it thing comes like which of them we should focus more. And as we are going through this process in my odyssey as an entrepreneur, I found like all of them are important. It is just we have to connect the dots. We have to put our hands and make sure that we are actually collaborating rather than competing. And this is also coming up with the governmental support is coming, at least from India, where we are actually supporting in all different fields as much as possible. We are not really putting all the money at one particular technology, but we are all different parts of technology. And this decentralized approach is very much needed so that we can grow sustainably all around the space. And our main important focus should be not to impose innovation, but to co-create. And over there, I would like to lend the words from our honorable minister he has given in his speech, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means that the whole world is a family. And very interestingly, as I was sitting there and listening to it, I found like, isn't it the ethos of the GYA? Isn't it the ethos of the cultural coming from all around the world, starting from Iraq to India, which actually boast thousands years of civilization. And over there, we not looked into only ourselves, but to the whole world. And by keeping this particular philosophy, I think we can bring the world to the global level, starting from a local grassroots level. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much for. And we have another 10, 15 minutes. And instead of asking questions myself, the first thing I want to ask you if you have any questions or any remark, because this is a very burning topic. And there is already somebody from the back of the room.
Thank you so much. It was really energizing as well as inspiring listening to all of you. My question is to my very good friend Arnab. Being an academician and then moved into entrepreneurial journey together with your academic career, I just want to know if you can share one instance where your entrepreneurial journey has educated you to become a better academician in your ongoing career.
Thank you, Santosh, for this question. So I would like to take the example. I was doing a research on carbon dioxide capture from the flue gases. So we are doing in the lab, we are working in a very small scale in test tube. The reaction was happening very nicely. We are very happy. And with our brimming joy, we met one of the industry people and said like, we have the solution for your problem. Now we can capture carbon dioxide. And this is not only can capture, it can give you a product which can produce revenue. And they're very happy. And they said like, at what scale you are doing? I said like, in milligrams. And it's like, what is the scale you need? And it's like, million tons. It's like, okay, so we have a lot of journey to go. And then I figured it out. It is not only that how the process is actually working, but to make to the scale what will be useful for the industry is very important. And there we learn most of the time, at least in academia myself, I was actually trying to find a screw and giving it to the industry, which actually probably need a nail. So from there on, I started doing, first go to the industry at what is the actual problem, what is the scale of the problem, and how we can bring our lab scale chemistry to that particular end. And over there, when we are doing it, we are actually going from not to bottom to up approach, but also top down approach. And over there, we are finding a lot of solutions which might be a problem later on, where we are trying to impose our innovations to fit to the industry rather than looking into what the industry actually needs. And this particular change in the scientific attitude helped me a lot. And I would also like to mention that when I say we are doing the research, it's not only me, it's like the student community, and the students, when they're doing the research, they're actually exposed to what is needed in the real life, what is needed in the industrial life. So when they got educated and they're graduating, they know how to fit in the real life. So it is a very eye-opening experience for us that how to look into the problem first and then try to find a solution. So that was very useful for us.
Very, very inspiring. Thank you. There is a question over there. It would be nice if you can tell your name first. Oh, sorry. And then on the back.
Am I going? Hi, I'm Nabil, and this question is primarily for Dr. Chaturvedi and Special Chief Secretary, Mr. Ranjan. We have seen a lot of impetus from the government on developing innovative products, pushing technology like artificial intelligence. Why do you think that we haven't so far seen a lot of meaningful and global AI products come out of India so far?
So, see, in this state, in Telangana, we have focused steadfastly on use cases, on applications. See, we are quite all right, even if the solution is developed elsewhere. We want to see India as the test bed for all possible use cases. And many people say this, that if you're able to find a solution for a problem in this country, you can solve it anywhere in the world. So if someone else is good at doing something else, let that be. I mean, of course, I'm not undermining the fact that we should not invest in research. Honorable Minister is here, and I'm sure both the central government and the state governments are keen to promote original research, more investments in R&D. But let us say if someone else is developing new products related to AI or Gen AI, and they're very good at doing so, let that happen. As long as we are able to use that to apply for specific solutions in finding, improving the quality of life of people here in our country.
Thank you so much for that question. I truly appreciate it. It's a question right after my heart. So in 2014, when the government changed, we moved from an era of policy paralysis to responsive governance, minimum government, and maximum governance. There are 3 or 4 things that started to change. Industry had more access to the government. There were more public consultations before even the Telecom Regulatory Authority put out the first draft. So to put out the first draft, they would go across the entire country. In India, and I'm so happy to share this, and earlier the Honorable Minister mentioned this, wisdom over the years was translated through dialogic tradition. So there's our old, my last name is Chaturvedi, and it comes from 4 Vedas, where they talk about scientific learning, they talk about rituals, they talk about space programs, they talk about how transactions should be made within families and kinship systems. I chose to read anthropology, and every single institution that I went to, I was blessed to have teachers that would encourage questions. And this is the foundation of thinking from first principles. This is the foundation of thinking through second order effects, and which is why I'm so happy to share with you. I'm not sure how many of you saw this when we started the conversation. This is what this screen looked like. It's called the dead screen or the lock screen. It was useless, and now across 120 times a day, people look at it to consume news, content, information. It's not an app. It does not consume battery. It does not consume data. It comes bundled with the Android device. It's an AI first use case, first product, which is on 500 million devices. We are so proud to share with you, we built it in India. There are 3,000 engineers in Bangalore who come from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. They come from Orissa, they come from Cuttack, they come from Meerut, they come from smaller cities in India. The only thing that this was built on was audacity of hope and the ability to make sure there's conviction of courage and belief that this was possible to do this from India. This was possible to do this from developing countries and emerging economies. Just 2 weeks ago, on 22nd of May, we launched a second app, which is now in 140 countries. It's never been done before, which is revolutionizing AI, and it's the future of commerce. Small businesses, MSMEs. But what is so important is a lot of times you will see that we chase goals and big, large US tech companies. We hold them to good standard. While I believe there are many, many lessons to be learned, but in an increasingly globalized world, the one thing that we don't need to be are Me Toos. There is no one blanket size fits all solution that works for everybody. And that is why in my earlier conversation, I talked about uniqueness, I talked about your individual journeys and what your lived experiences bring to these situations. So when you spent that childhood at your maternal and your paternal grandparents, native wisdom from your lived experiences, and how do you scale that to solve for larger problems? I'm so glad to hear Professor Arnab recognize that there is a gap between how academia is looking at large scalable solutions and problems. We must not forget that there'll always be a space for pure sciences. We need more of those. But these are the 4 pillars that we're hoping to address with Professor Sharma's guidance, wisdom, and mentorship at INSA, that no scientists are not mad scientists who need to be projected as doomsday spellers in Hindi movies and in Bollywood cinema. We need to create more role models for science where we recognize them, respect them, and these are our modern day heroes. We also need to draw these connections in early lived experiences. So entrepreneurship was not so cool many, many years ago. Startups were, oh, you didn't get a job and therefore you are experimenting, but you'll come back and get a stable job. This recognition has to happen when you start felicitating, recognizing peers who are making breakthroughs. For an entrepreneur, it's a very, very lonely journey. So the short answer to your question, we've changed that from Digital India to India's OpenAI stack to the UPI system. The world is now looking at the innovations which are coming out of India. We're developing our own generative AI model. But the last bit, please remember, artificial intelligence is not just foundational models. It's the chip, it is the semiconductors, it is people who are willing to give it their all to build scalable solutions through machine learning. It is the talent that you're developing for AI, and it is also the AI use case applications, which is where we're so humbled and proud to be leading that discussion. So lots to celebrate and lots to look forward to. Thank you.
And as a roboticist, there is also a lot of robotics in AI. There was a question over there, and we ask just a very quick answer because time is running out.
It's Miriam from Morocco, Associate Professor. I'm also part of the leadership team of Solar Women and Solar Energy. My question to Professor Nohed and Dr. Sylvie. It is possible to build our own businesses while keeping our academic position, or we should leave our academic position to succeed an internship action? And what are the social and structural obstacles we should lead on to succeed our journey in internship?
1 minute reply.
My point of view, I suppose there's a big confliction to gather to your academic career and your plan B for entrepreneurship. For me, although I am retired, but there were a lot of confliction how you could connect between two careers at the same time. So it depends on the policy. For me, as a retired, it's acceptable and legally in my home, but I have no idea about other countries. I suppose the plan B should be implanted early at the primary and going up. So you should learn your kids from children, from at home, that they should have their brand and try to enrich this innovation gradually. After that, it decided, and depending on the border of the your country.
So just adding my voice to what she shared, and I love the mother's kitchen. It's very, very important that we create pressure groups. So because Francesco's saying under a minute, there are 3 things that you absolutely must do. If your educational institution does not have a policy, there's a pen and paper consultancy where if you're not using resources of your institution, you have to give back only 10% of what you're making from your business. It's legitimate. If you're using the lab, the infrastructure and the resources, up to 30% is contributed back. The Indian government facilitates this. It allows you to enroll students so that they get real live examples and experience. Second, I can't agree more on building a brand for your business. It adds value. It unlocks a lot of value, which in terms of investments become easy. So learn from experiences of small Italian family-owned enterprises where father and son duos, that's the handmade craftsmanship of scaling up business and that unique touch that only you bring. Third, on community lean-in, if there are no pressure groups in your institution, make sure that you build them. A part of the funds raised must go into encouraging entrepreneurship. So I sit on the higher education board in Kashmir, where the first thing we did was to create safe spaces for women, just to come out and tell their stories, and where they were able to help each other out with scaling businesses. Getting a great team is the last bit of advice. Have a partner who complements your skill set. Thank you.
Excellent. And with this, unfortunately, we have to close, but you are very much invited to approach the speakers after the session. Now, before you all go for lunch, we have a group picture, which is very important. So please assemble for the group picture. And a round of applause for all the speakers, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I request everyone please to move out for the conference photo. Yes, you can take this way.
Take the left exit.
Yeah, I request everyone to please take the left exit, and it will direct you directly to the podium where we have, yes, where the arc is.
So request you all to kindly exit from my left. You can follow some of our volunteers, and Veda is also there. And assemble just where we enter the convention center from guest house side.
I didn't know that you're. Okay.